You dirty slaver son of a bitch.
Hi, I'm Brian. He's Brian. This is Brian's at the Movies. That's the only joke I'm going to throw out.
Yeah,
I
folks,
think.
this is not going to be a funny review. Because unlike our friends, we actually saw a serious movie.
Yeah.
A real film. Cinema verite.
Fucking dead serious. This was...
12 Years a Slave.
Yes.
And it's probably one of the most brutal films I've seen all year. Not bad. I mean, it's a...
Oh, yeah,
wow,
no,
it's an excellent film.
Bad. This is a fantastic film.
But it highlights just how fucking terrible we are as human beings. It really does. It's very difficult to watch. But I think everyone needs to see it. It's that good.
I mean, yeah, it's seriously, it's a good look at just the fucking endurance of the human spirit and all that kind of stuff. You know, I mean, I'm not trying to downplay it at all. I don't want to sound like that's. But I mean, it's.
Yeah, you can't. I mean,
This is a guy that, despite every fucking impossible situation, just. God damn it, he kept his head up and he kept level about it.
Yeah, amazingly so. It's just, I mean, the background on the story is it's Chiwetel Ejiofor. He plays Solomon Northrop. He's a free man living in New York with his wife and 2 kids. I think they said about 1841. 2 traveling musicians, entrepreneurs.
Part of like a circus
troupe. They approach him, yeah. Well, yeah, they approach him for a gig. They want him to accompany them to Washington, D.C. and play fiddle for this troupe. And he said, and they offer to pay him whatever he needs. And long story short, they get to Washington, they drug him and then sell him into slavery.
So they're bastards of the highest caliber.
Right, yeah, they're scum of the earth, and I hope they're rotting in the deepest pits of hell, quite frankly, because anybody who can do that to another human being is lower than a human being. They're scum.
Well, and just the worst part of it, too, I mean, obviously all of it's the worst part, but the fucking, like, the insult to injury part is the fact that his wife and children were heading out of town for, like, a 3-week... something like that, stint doing some, like, work somewhere.
She cooks.
And, like, she was going somewhere, like, a missionary type thing.
So she was going to, I guess, I think there was a court system or something that's going on during that time. So she goes and cooks for them because she's renowned for her cooking skills. So she does that to make money, but she's gone for...
Yeah, and he talks about, like, oh, shit, that's, like, it's going to... You know, he's talking... about how it's going to suck not having his family around for a couple weeks. And then, when these guys approach him, they're like, oh, yeah, it's a 2-week stint. You're there, you're back, get paid for it. He's like, well,
all right. The time, it gives him something to do. And
I had nothing else lined up, so obviously this is a great idea.
So, and then and I don't think they even realized it at the time. I think they just, or maybe they did. They knew his wife was out of town, but, so he doesn't have any way of contacting her, so she has no idea what happens to him. So they send him down the river to New Orleans and sell him into slavery. And it gets worse from there. Quite frankly,
he tries to get a leg up any chance he gets, and it's just constantly shot down. Like when it looks like there might be a chance, like when they're on the steamship heading down towards the south, he and another couple guys who were in the same situation, like they got kind of shanghaied into things, are talking about the idea of maybe like, oh yeah, it's a small crew, we could probably overthrow these guys. One of the guys who thought that gets just stabbed by one of the guys en route, and then they are forced to be the ones who like toss him over.
Yeah, and then the guys, the crew, they figured they could go after the crew, but the one guy tries it, and I don't know if he's been attacked before, but he just turns around and sticks the knife right in his gut without hesitation, and it's just so quick. It's like before you even know what happened, he's bleeding to death.
Yeah, and so they get down there, and upon arrival, as they're getting out of dock, like basically, Solomon and his like the one like compatriot that he's had in this whole thing so far, he wasn't a free man, but he was a servant to someone up in the north who was treating him pretty right.
Right.
And so that guy was there actually waiting for the boat to arrive, and as soon as it lands, dude's like, "Hey, here's my papers. He's with me." Ew.
See ya.
And so I was like, "Oh shit." Well, well, so far the two people that he's befriended in this have either died or been
ditched him.
been given like a respite from all this. So it's like this guy's life fucking story throughout this is like
Right.
every chance he has at like possibly something like this good happening, nope,
And then
turns this shit on him. And like even like like when he is sold down there, I mean he is doing some some heavy work, but
the first man he's sold to is actually, he's a slave owner, but he's a somewhat decent human being.
yeah, like he's not he's he's played he's Mr. Ford, played by Benedict
Cumberbatch.
But
Best British name ever.
But yeah, I mean he seems like, I mean, despite the whole slave owner thing, like he seems like he's just a legitimately decent guy. Like, and he feels like, you can tell like he feels bad for the situation, but it's the sort of thing is like he kind of has this attitude like, it's like, what's going on really sucks and I want to help you guys out.
Yeah.
But I am a plantation owner and I do have to have slaves.
And the big scene in that is actually when he's first buying them. There's also another slave that was with Solomon and her two kids that actually were kidnapped in Washington and taken along. The son, he wants to buy the son, I guess the slave trader, played by Paul Giamatti, actually, instead of actually selling him to Cumberbatch's character, actually turns to another guy and ups the price and sells the boy away. So then Cumberbatch tries to buy the daughter in addition to, because he's already purchased the mom. So he tries to buy the daughter, and Giamatti's like, "No, I got more money. I can make a hell of a lot more money off her when she grows up. So no, I'm not selling the kid." And he's like, and Cumberbatch's character, his last name's Ford, looks at him dead in the eye and says, "I mean, this is a child. Don't you have any sense of compassion?" He's like, "My sense of compassion goes as far as a coin, as far as the length of a coin." And it's just that kind of just terrible fucking
cold. That was like the coldest I've ever seen Giamatti. Like he's usually like, no matter what sort of a character he's playing, he's usually somewhat sort of affable. But I mean, I mean, he was just fucking heartless.
There's very, very few likable characters in this whole movie.
And like I say, it is weird that, and it is odd saying it, but it is weird that one of the likable characters is a slave owner.
Right.
And, but yeah, I mean, he's really the only one who ever seems to step out of his way to, like, come up to bat for him.
Right.
Like, he knows, like, he can tell that well, I should mention, too, throughout most of the movie, he's not actually called Solomon Northrop, he's called Platt. Because that's the name they assigned him.
Yeah.
And
they said he's from Georgia. Escaped a runaway slave from Georgia. So they didn't get suspicious.
Yeah. But, I mean, he can tell that he's more than just, like, a slave. But, again, like, it's sort of the thing is, like, he can't do anything about it. But, like, he goes out of his way, like, he tries, like...
He treats them as well as he can for property. But he's not going to go out of his way to free him because he's in debt to the slave owner, or slave trader, who he just basically bought both of them for a note So he's in debt to this slave trader, so it's not like he can just free him because then he's out the money. So, I mean, he's compassionate, but only so far as his own interests are concerned.
Yeah, because one of the people working for him, one of the overseers for him, is played by Paul Dano.
Paul Dano, yeah.
And he just gets a stick up his ass about Northrop. Like, he just decides, like, I am just gonna ride this guy like fucking hell.
Well, he undermines him because there's.
Well, he's smarter than him.
Oh yeah, he's very smart. He's a hell of a lot smarter than Dano's character, but he finds he did work before. He obviously, as a free man, he did work, and one of them was building
like working on a
canal. So they're processing lumber, creating lumber and whatnot, and they're walking it just down a 3-mile stretch from where they cut it. Well, he gets the idea is like, well, I can ford it down the river. It'll be less work. One person can do a lot more, and it's a shorter trip. And Dano, he's like, "Are you an engineer? Or you a nigga?" And it's like, actually, that's a pretty good idea. And to his credit, Ford, Cumberbatch's character, actually listens to Solomon, and actually, obviously it works. But
yeah.
of course,
well, I even like that line he has, like, it's like, well, I'll say it if you're not going to. I'm impressed.
Yeah. So it works, but it pisses off Dano's character because he doesn't want to be undermined by, an uppity nigger is what he called him.
I should point out that despite all of the, any other kind of movie I've seen, whether it's a blaxploitation film or like a Tarantino film, this movie had the most pervasive use of racial epithets that I've ever seen.
And but here's the thing, like with Django or something like that, it almost seemed like Tarantino was using it because he could get away with it because that was the timeline. This was it. I mean, it's just, obviously that's what they called him back then, but it wasn't like it was over the top. I mean, that was just what they did. It was matter of fact.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't played for shock value.
No,
it wasn't
not at all.
It's like, did he say it? Like, no, it was just like, that's how they talk. It was, and it was kind of chilling. Like some points, like when Paul Dano was like introducing himself and one of the other workers there and letting him know how things are going to be. Like, he sings like this weird, like, sort of he's singing like sort of like this slave, like hymnal type sounding song, but it's all about better watch out and do your work, otherwise we will kill you.
Yeah, and if you run, you better make sure you escape,
or we will kill you.
I mean, it was terrifying listening to the lyrics.
Chilling.
Yeah, and I mean, when they use nigger in the movie, if there is a shock value, it's only because you're watching these people be degraded. Not the word itself, but the conditions in which they're being subjected to while they're saying that. They're using that to denigrate them. And that's if there's a shocking moment to that, it's the denigration that they have when they're saying it, or when they're calling them boy. These grown men, some of them older than them, and they're going, boy. And it's just...
But it's not comical. Like, it's not, it doesn't come across as like it's legitimately, a thing. And even when like
I said, there's very few bright points.
Yeah.
It's just one long, just terrible thing after terrible thing to these people, and it just,
because even kindness in this is sort of backhanded, because like with him and Dano, things kind of get to a head at a point, and Dano's telling him to strip down, and he's gonna give him some lashes for I don't know,
doing exactly what he told,
doing exactly what he was instructed to do.
Yeah. He just had it out for him at that point, so he wasn't gonna.
He kind of pushes back against that, kind of wrestles the whip from it, and just starts beating the piss out of him.
Yeah, that was actually kind of fun to watch. Just like, okay, good.
And Daniel looked like he was going to kind of push back at him, but one of the other overseers who he was worked like directly for Mr. Ford. It was his job to make sure that everything was tended to, and he kind of lets Dano know, like, hey, you can't touch him. Like, you're wanting to kill this guy, you can't
do it
because that's Ford's property. You fuck that up, you get fucked
You're
up.
done.
And he tells Northrop, like, look, if I'm gonna go deal with this guy, you stay the fuck here. If you run, I can't help you. I cannot protect you. But even at that, his form of protection is to do nothing more really than just make sure Paul Dano doesn't actually kill him. But like he leaves him pretty much like strung up,
hanging from a tree, basically, with his toes to support him from
fucking
choking
dancing on his tiptoes.
While he has enough courtesy to have them run and get Ford, so then he can cut him down. After he spends an entire day hanging in this tree, and it is the entire day. He does not from sun up until damn near sundown. He is just dangling and just barely surviving by just keeping his toes like tiptoe. It's disturbing to say the least.
It's fucking chilling too, because like since that happened like towards sunup, like really none of the other slaves were really out doing things. So while he's hanging there just choking, just barely supporting himself enough to keep from dying, you just start seeing these other people like coming out of like the their quarters and kind of like going across, and like some of their children just kind of like playing a little bit. People just like starting up their daily chores,
ignoring him.
I mean, it's such a part of fucking their life that
they don't think anything of it.
It's like, well,
and they can't, and they obviously can't do anything because then they'll suffer the same fate. So they don't know why he's hanging, so they're not going to try and stick their neck out on the line for him when it could end up their necks that are hanging. And it's sad to watch. It really is. It's because you're watching it just going, like as soon as they come out and nobody looks in his direction, then that's just not gonna bode well for him. I think one person has the gall to run up and give him a little bit of water, but then she immediately runs away.
Yeah, and I can only assume that she was vaguely instructed to, because it was I think the wife. Yeah. And then she just watches it and then turns away. And that's the thing, it's like these people, you can tell she is conflicted. You can easily see it on her face as she turns away, but she still does. This was what these people did. They knew that there were people like out there that knew what was going on was wrong, but still just did nothing. They just turned away. Yeah. Well, and then again, like sort of, and it's odd to say to his credit, but to his credit, Ford in an attempt to help him. Like after he cuts him down, like he actually brings him inside the plantation house, and is actually like keeping watch out over him,
right?
Because he pretty much like he lets him know like, yeah, Paul Dano's character is not gonna stop until he sees you dead.
Yeah,
and he's like, I can't stop him from trying to kill you.
No,
and I can't just let you go.
Yeah.
So the best thing he can come up with is basically he sells him in the debt over to another master.
And then that scene also is very indicative of how far he would be willing to go, which wasn't very far, because at that point Solomon breaks down and tells him his story, and
starts trying to tell him like look, I'm not a fucking slave. I was kidnapped. A fucking family, and he just literally tells him like, I can't.
He's like, I can't hear this. I don't want to hear. I
can't know what you're about to tell me.
Right. Exactly.
Because I think because for him like that just, I mean, it makes the situation 10 times fucking harder. I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, he still would have done it, but I think he did that to try and soothe at least what little was left of his conscience at that point.
Yeah.
And then the guy he sells him to is Michael Fassbender's character, and
It's just
he's almost polar opposite of Ford.
batshit insane.
And there's a slave there, Patsy, who plays a big role going forward at that point of the movie. She's his favorite, and she also catches his fancy, and that frequently, and she gets abused a lot. And then the wife, not only does she get sexually abused from Fassbender's character, but his wife is physically and mentally berating her because she knows what's going on. She knows that he's, frolicking off with her every night, and she basically makes this Patsy girl's life a living hell.
And I mean, it's
already more than it was.
It's some scenes that are just fucking like brutal because like again, Fassbender, his character, like he's this weird religious nutcase.
Yeah. Which a lot of plantation owners in the South were very deeply religious. I mean, the South still to this day is very deep into religion, but it was even more so back then. And he used his religion to justify beating these slaves.
Yeah.
He tried to quote scripture from the Bible
And
as
twist it to how it sounded good for him.
To where he's like, see, if you don't obey me, this says I get to beat you. It doesn't say how many times. It could be 40, it could be 150, but it's in the scripture, so I can do it.
And he just had such a twisted view on shit, but like he was also like just so fucking crazy. Like there was one night, like after a full day's work, they're sleeping, and he just bursts into the slave quarters, half off his ass, drunk, just demanding that they all come up to the plantation house and dance for him. And they're all doing this, and I mean it's a fucking like everybody I think in the fucking auditorium gasped like literally like it's just this oddly tense scene. Like these slaves are obviously, you can tell like like I mean obviously I mean it's stupid to point out, but I mean you can tell they don't want to be there or doing this. But like even at that point, like they're just like, this is fucking bullshit, we just want to sleep. Like they're just half-assing, like it's like, oh we're dancing.
Except for Patsy.
She looks just kind of legit into it.
Yeah, and I think whether she was doing that as a ruse to try and deflect attention away from her, but it didn't work because the wife comes in, grabs one of those heavy old-time bourbon glass bottles and just chucks it right at her face.
Oh,
just horribly, just
fucking
puts
major league
it.
pitcher from like 6 feet away.
Point blank, just right into her face.
I mean, for this movie, I mean that was fucking like right there with like shit like in Drive when he just walks in and just fucking rails
beats
that
the guy
dude
with the hammer.
Just bam, fucking blasts his hand. Like it's like that because it's just so out of fucking nowhere. Like you see her walk in and just like grab the bottle, like, oh, she's gonna get a drink. Bam.
Yeah.
And I mean she is just fucking cold.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
Jesus Christ. She's it's essentially like shit like the old song fucking Maggie's Farm. I mean, it's like shit. Fassbender was crazy, but this bitch was worse, just how fucking cold she was.
Well, because here's the thing, it's like Fassbender at least looked at them as property, and he treated the valuable ones better. But his wife just didn't give a fuck. She just, you know what? You're doing inappropriate things with her, so I'm going to make it to where you don't want to anymore. He's like, she basically trying to make excuse for him to beat her to death.
Like you need to get the fuck rid of her. He's like, no, pick a different one. I'll get rid of a different one.
Yeah.
He's
like, I'll
not
get rid
her.
of you. I'll get rid of you first before I get rid of her.
Yeah, he said basically, I was like, don't put yourself up against her.
Yeah,
you'll lose.
And I mean, a lot of the really brutal stuff revolves around Patsy too. Like, and the wife in a later scene just walks up to her and just claws her right across the face. Really, no provocation.
Just does it.
Just does it.
Fucking deep shit. I mean, like, fucking
Yeah, it was gouges.
Scars.
And you feel for this Patsy because then later on during that scene, that evening, she comes to Solomon's character, hands him a trinket in exchange for him drowning her. She wanted him to kill her. She was that just deep into hell.
Yeah, and trying to like moralize it to him, like
Yeah.
no, like you know, you're God-fearing man and all, and I understand that. You're not going to go to hell for this. I mean,
Because God is merciful.
yeah,
He'll
God
see
favors
this.
mercy, and this is an act
This
of
is a
mercy.
And
You drowning me in a shallow creek and burying me where someone will never find me.
if he would have been less of a man and less had his convictions, he might have turned it. And you know what? I wouldn't have necessarily faulted her for wanting to do that because I mean she's just horribly mistreated.
Well, and then just as things continue to play out, like you can tell, like there are a few points, like because of things that happen as it keeps going, like you can tell Solomon really, like in his head, like it has to be thinking like all like the shit that eventually happens to her and what all is going to come later, like could have been avoided if he had just gone ahead and done it.
Yeah,
And, like you can see, like that fucking
eats
guilt
on him.
just destroys him.
So and then that sets up the big scene where she actually is caught going to another plantation who she was friends with the plantation's.
Yeah, she was kind of like, because of her status there on Fassbender's plantation, she was given leave on like on
Sundays.
the Sabbath
That's like, yeah.
to kind of have like free reign to venture out and everything. And yeah, she kind of used that time to go across to this other plantation where she kind of had some acquaintance, and she went there to basically procure some soap because Fassbender's wife refused to let her bathe.
Yeah.
Because she just she hated her.
Yeah.
And figured, like, I'm assuming still with the whole, like, it's like, oh well, if she's just absolutely fucking foul, maybe that'll stop him from wanting to traipse out there every night.
Yeah. And Fassbender's character, who is very, very jealous, he thinks that this other plantation owner had been trying to make the moves on her anyway. So he doesn't believe her when she says that she was going to stop. She's got it in her hand. She's showing it to him. It's like, you can beat me to death and I will go to my grave. This is what I was doing. But he's so blinded by that point that sets up probably easily the most brutal scene in the movie. He lashes her to a post, and he can't actually whip her at first.
He keeps kind of trying to work up the nerve, and his wife is just like behind him, just fucking tearing at him to do it. And then he decides like he can't do it, so he hands the whip over to Solomon and orders him to do it. And he's just kind of like, just like,
I mean, yeah, he's hitting her.
He's hitting her, but like it would hurt, but it's not. It's not
going
what
to
these
draw
guys
blood.
would be.
It's not
what these guys.
You're not
would be
taking
doing.
flesh from bone. So then Fassbender basically he grabs a pistol, points it under his chin, and looks at Solomon and says, "I will kill every last nigger in this place if you don't actually start whipping her." And I mean, and you can see just the fear and the sorrow in his face, and he starts whipping her, and each time the camera is over her shoulder, facing her. Every time he hits, you can see just the blood mist just rising, and that's difficult. But then it cuts to a shot of her back, and you're watching each one of these lashes deep gouges. I mean,
like it's some serious hurt, and then Fassbender decides that he's not doing it to his standard, so he eventually gets up the nerve.
Takes over.
I mean, he's just going fucking all out, and he's just shouting like scripture the whole time. And I mean, it kind of like the camera does like a kind of pan around him, and you catch like her back for a second, and it is just fucking brutal.
Yeah, it's
and yeah, it's just it's fucking terrible.
Mm-hmm. You're just, and it's very difficult to watch. I mean, knowing that people would do that, but also knowing that there were other people that could have stopped it and didn't, because it was the culture of the time. But I mean, that they're just highlighting something that happened all the time. And if it was that brutal just in that one scene, I mean, it's just, you multiply that by countless other times, and it just, the whole scene is just terrible. Like I said, just very, very tough to watch, very, very tough to stomach that was a part of our history. Very tough to not kind of hate yourself a little bit, because that kind of shit is possibly in everybody. And the fact that if under different circumstances it could have been you, it's very tough. And I make jokes, bad jokes sometimes, but there was nothing that I would have ever done to do something like that, and my jokes can be terrible sometimes, but there's nothing that would ever go that far as treating another human being like that. There's a definite line there, and these people found some way to justify it, and it's just terrible.
Yeah, well, in one of the characters in the movie, at a point there's a white man out there working in the field,
right?
And apparently he's a former slaver, like a former overseer
yeah.
that worked at another plantation that kind of got above his station a little bit, and a drunkard and everything, and he was basically like offered up as like an indentured servant, to pay off, sort of like a restitution deal. And it's randomly, it's Garrett Dillahunt, and Fassbender, one of his methods of just beating the shit out of people. I mean, that's what it is. It's just beating the shit out of people. Is every day, because he has a cotton plantation.
Yeah.
His thing is to gauge what they do every day, like how many pounds of cotton they're able to pick each day, and if it's less than the day before, even by like a pound or two, that earns you lashes.
Yeah.
And he does like this daily lineup every day to do that. And like there's, his thing is that everybody should be able to do 200 pounds. Well, like Solomon one day he does like 180. He's like, that's not even average, so
Yeah,
he gets
it's
beat.
wit.
But then Garrett Dillahunt, he picks like 60 pounds, something like that, and he's just like, it's like, well, I guess tomorrow you'll try harder.
Yeah, we may make you cotton picker yet, or something like that.
And that's it. That's his punishment.
And then pulls Solomon out and sends him
beats
to
the
be
shit
whipped.
out of him. Yeah, Dillahunt kind of, like Solomon's asking him like, well, how can you do shit like that and end up here? And he's explaining him like the situation, like of him being a drunken idiot. And he kind of mentions like that, people doing what he did, like, yeah, you basically have to either lie to yourself or just trick yourself into believing what you're doing, or find a way
an outlet
to vent. And his was drinking to excess. So Solomon kind of gets the notion that he could possibly trust him to like help him out, and he talks to him and kind of says like, well, as like a white man, he can do certain things that he can't do. So he asks him, if I write up a letter to my family, if you can just, all I need you to do is just fucking mail it. And he swears on his life that he'll fucking do that, and then sells him out immediately to try to gain favor.
Yeah. And it's that scene's scary because you've got Fassbender with just a lantern, with his eye, just talking to him with his arm wrapped around him, and he convinces him that it wasn't true, that he can't. He's like, where would I get paper and pen?
Yeah, like, where am I going to get paper and pen? I'm a slave. I don't know how to write.
Yeah. So he's looking at him, and there's really a tense moment after he says the story, and
it's fucking like, nobody's talking.
And then Fassbender goes, well, goddamn. He's like, well, if he wasn't free and white. And as he turns, he pulls up, he's got this little blade that he was just going to stick him with if he didn't believe him. He was going to have no problem just killing him right then and there. And you see the terror, but you think it's terror that's implied something in the future. It's like, no, you don't see that knife until the scene's pretty much done.
Yeah, he just kind of like brings it up and just like taps him on the shoulder with it.
And it's just the terror that Solomon has at that moment isn't an implied future terror. It's Jesus Christ, if I don't convince him, I'm dead right here. He's just going to let me bleed out. And he would have. I mean, if he hadn't bleed, you believe it. If he had not convinced him, he was dead right there and then, without a second thought. And then it becomes hard, obviously, for him to trust anybody. But it sets up kind of very end of the movie where there's a hired
carpenter foreman, played by Brad
Pitt just kind of randomly shows up,
looking very Amish.
Yeah. And he's come to find out he's actually from Canada, so this whole thing on slavery just doesn't sit well with him, and he has kind of a go-to with Fassbender's character about it, and they go back and forth about it, and how Fassbender's like, these are my property, and he's like, well, these are human beings, and Fassbender kind of gets face-to-face with him and kind of turns around, and
he definitely has the conversation. Yeah, it takes it's a very devil's advocate style conversation of well, what if you were in their position and this happened to you? He's like, well, that's fucking impossible that I would ever be somebody's property. I mean, let's be honest here. I'm white, and Fassbender just has this look the entire conversation of just like, God damn it. I am just trying to think of a way that it'll be legal and justified for me to murder you right fucking here.
Yeah. He wants to, at the very least, hit him. But I mean, and then Pitt's character is obviously the ration man, the common man has rational thinking and realizes, he was from a different. I mean, you could almost put him from a different time. It'd be like one of us going back in time, going, "This is wrong."
Like, yeah, the slavery thing. It's kind of bullshit.
Yeah,
If you think about it, at the end of the day, it's kind of bullshit.
Yeah, he's all that he's just that scripture that you quote and stuff, and he's like it says that men are equal. It doesn't have a designation between black and white. But eventually, they're working on this, I guess, gazebo.
Yeah.
For the time they're building it, Solomon takes a chance and confides in Brad Pitt's character, saying, he's talking about Canada. He's like, can you guess where that is? He's like, well, I know where it is. I've been there. And Brad Pitt, his character's kind of like, well, you traveled a lot for slave, and then he finally just, he under duress.
Yeah, he opens up to him, but I mean, you can tell like the entire time he's just thinking like, motherfucker, this is gonna be another setup.
Exactly, and he's like, I'm scared to tell you anything, and so eventually he does, and it's a really emotional scene watching him. He begs. He's begging Pitt's character, you have to do this for me. He's like, it would bring me, unbelievable happiness if you found a way to help free me. And to his credit, I mean, Pitt's character is honest with him. He's like, I'm scared to do something like that. He's like, I'm scared for you, and I'm scared for me.
Yeah, if he gets caught out by these good old fucking Southern boys.
Yeah, they can make him disappear.
Yeah. He's going to be up a tree right next to him.
But, I mean, he does it because, I mean, he's one of the only characters in the movie that
has a soul.
Has conviction, has the conscience, and just can't stand by while like all the other characters can. They can just stand by and turn their other cheek, and he's the one character that can't do it. It goes against everything in him if he would just turn away and just leave him.
And it is a true just act of kindness because he has nothing to gain.
Oh no, and everything to lose.
Because that's why like Garrett Dillahunt, like he sold him out the first chance he got because it could help him out if he did.
Right, it would help his chances of becoming an overseer. But Pitt's character he does it because it's the right thing to do. And he gets it away, and it kind of cuts. Like, you see the unformed, like the half-made gazebo, and then it cuts to later on. The gazebo's finished, it's getting painted. And then Solomon's in the field as this cart comes up. And he's looking at it, and he's kind of worried because there's a guy with a gun who turns out to be the sheriff as he's calling him over. And it turns out that one of the guys that's in the carriage was an old general store owner that he had frequented back in the day. Brad Pitt his character kept his word and got news to him. So it's just he's asking him. The sheriff's asking him straight up if Platt's his real name or if there's another name, and they know exactly who he is. They just want confirmation.
Yeah, because he's asking like, okay, well, what are your kids' names?
Right.
Okay, well, what was your wife's name before you married her?
Yeah. And then Fassbender's, of course, freaking out. And the only thing you can think of is like, you're not taking my damn property. You're not, And then they're like, well, he's a free man. You can't own a free man.
Free man, nothing. I bought him.
Yeah. And he's like, well, we got papers saying otherwise. And they go back and forth with the court thing. And there's a really, really sad scene where Patsy runs up and they have a hug, but I mean he leaves her there. There's nothing he can do, and it's sad to watch, because that she's probably gonna end up dead. I mean, she doesn't have him to kind of. He was kind of in her corner, and with him gone, I can't imagine that she would have been there much longer. Whether she would have killed herself or been killed by either the Fassbender or his wife. But then, then it cuts to him back in New York, and that that scene was. I mean, it's the happiest scene, which is really bad to say because I mean it's sad to watch him walk into that house to see his kids completely grown up.
They're grown. They're fucking adults.
The daughter's married
and has a kid.
And
the fucking the kind of man that he was, the first thing he does is walks in and apologizes for his appearance, but you know the past few years have not been kind to him.
You know, and he apologizes to him. You know, it's like you have any reason to apologize. There's nothing you need to apologize for, but just there aren't many movies where I'll start tearing up, but that scene had me. That scene was sad but touching, and you could, I mean, if Chiwetel doesn't get an Oscar, fuck the Academy, because it's so, everything he goes through is so rough, and you can't, it doesn't let up for a moment. Like, until he's back home, there's not a moment where you're not afraid that he could just be gone at any time.
Yeah, and the level of performance he brings to it is, I mean, it's staggering, because like there are quite a few scenes throughout the movie just kind of to like punctuate things here and there where it's an interesting directorial choice to do, where it'll have certain scenes where it's just kind of lingering shots on just an empty field, or there's one part where there's I'd say it's a good like minute-long shot of just Solomon kind of standing there, and it's a close kind of crop up, like it's basically just his face about yay big on screen, standing in front of like a tree, and I mean it makes for some very powerful scenes just because of like the level of performance that he brings to it.
Yeah, there's not many people where you could stand in front of a camera and just look in three directions in the course of a minute and a half with nothing else going on, and it still is captivating. I mean, you're watching this man almost. I mean, at that point, because it was shortly after the beating that Patsy had, that almost broke him. He was given a gift of a violin from Ford Cumberbatch's character. He goes off on his own and just destroys it. I mean, it was kind of a symbolic of not only his freedom and what he has waiting for him, but also his enslavement, the terrible things that had happened to him. So it's like he breaks that, so he's right there teetering on the edge.
Well, and there's a scene too where one of the other field workers just dies out there.
Yeah.
And he and another couple guys are given the chore of burying him, and then later that day they kind of have a little, like the slaves kind of gather there at this little de facto, you know, workers cemetery they've built. And they're singing hymnals, and throughout the entire movie, he like consistently, like, he never gets in on any of this stuff, because you can, like, he just always has this persistence, this determination to him to, like, it's like, I'm not a slave, I'm not gonna act like a fucking
he's
slave.
above it. Yeah.
And like it really, like, it was a scene, like it really felt like, like, at that moment, like, he kind of was almost resigning himself to that fate, because, like, you can see him, like, they're singing, and he's just kind of, like, not having it, and then just slowly starts, like, getting into it, and then just fucking like just belting it out,
Full
just
blown.
fucking singing his heart out, and you can see like this man is just welling up and just fucking crumbling at this, like thinking like this, like fucking tomorrow, like the realization of it, like this could be fucking me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the best performances I've seen anybody turn in. Like I said, I mean, he deserves a fucking Oscar for this, hands down. Even as far as like the movie, like I say, like the direction was fantastic. The use of like music, I think it was like Hans Zimmer did the score for it too.
Yeah, he did.
And it does a fantastic job, like setting up like these very tense, just ominous moments.
Like one of the big ones that I remember was when they're doing the fiddle, and while they're doing the dance, and it's this happy dance. There's this ominous orchestra background music that is just. It sounds. I mean,
it was interesting because they're overlaying different musical scores. Like there's the happy, like, you know, dee lee 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 kind of fiddling that he's doing, but then just underneath it is just this solemn, like very just like
ominous
bass heavy score playing. Same as when after that overseer runs off Paul Dano, and he's just like sitting there in like that building he was putting together, like it's that same way, like
just that ominous, just
like that music, like fucking very very slow and bass heavy, like it almost in a way like I mean it didn't seem out of place, but it was almost like sort of more of the score you'd see in like a horror film.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. It's like you were expecting somebody to come out of a door with like a cleaver and just start hacking people. It's just that
in a scene like that where it's a very different like juxtaposition of what you would figure. I mean, it makes for a very, you know, a very heavy scene. Like it really made like this, like it really worked for like developing a sense of dread. Like you legitimately, like throughout this movie, are very concerned and very worried.
Yes.
For Solomon. And I mean, I think, I mean, hands down, you know, story-wise, directorially, acting, like, I mean, it's fucking, it's a gripping movie.
Oh, yeah. There's no reason not to see this. For the acting connotations, for the historical connotations, you know, this is something everyone should see, because it's a part of what America is, for good or bad.
Yeah.
And it's just yeah.
And it's so terrible because even in the after the final scene, there's a couple title cards that go across, like mentioning, you know, what actually transpired after the events of it, and it basically spells out, and again, like, you know, the fucking man just can't catch a break. Like, he was able to find and take to trial everyone involved with what happened to him, and they all fucking walked. Because every single one of them.
Even though he was a free man, he had no rights to testify at this trial. So without his testimony, there was no evidence. So he gets these guys to trial. They tell him, oh, well, you can't testify, and it falls to pieces because he's the only material witness.
Which I can't even imagine. Like, it's hard as shit to find people now. After not seeing these guys, who he only knew for like a couple weeks, finding them 12 years later, and then actually getting them to trial is a staggering feat in and of itself.
Yeah.
But then just do all of that, and then everything he's been through, and then it's like, well, we can't prove they did anything wrong, so they get to go home tonight.
And the sad thing is, had it happened 8 years later, he would have been able to testify. But at the time, it was still the 1850s. Slavery was still, the Civil War wasn't even a thought in anybody's mind. Neither, I mean, and certainly giving blacks rights, you know, real rights, not just, oh, well, you're free, that's all the rights you get, you know.
I guess we can't whip you today.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to whip you, but you don't get to do all the stuff that we do, like vote and, you know. I mean, it's amazing that they actually even went to trial with it, you know, considering that he couldn't testify. You know, I mean, that would have been like the kangaroo trial, essentially, because it was for show to try and make him feel better, but obviously it wouldn't have made him feel better unless they actually got convicted, and you know, but they made the pretense of going through the motions and arresting these guys, getting them to trial. So it's like, oh, well, you know, we did our due diligence. You know, we had a trial, you know. And this was the North, you know. This wasn't like it was the Deep South where, you know, they probably wouldn't even gone to trial. But even in the North, I mean, they just didn't have any rights. You know, they weren't slaves, but that was all the more they had. Yeah. It was like, well, you're not in chains, so
yeah, be happy about that.
Yeah, be happy you're not getting whipped every day is essentially the vibe that they would have gotten every day, and it's just terrible.
But yeah, I mean, as far as things go, like, I mean, final thoughts.
I mean,
I can't recommend this movie enough. Like, it's fantastic. It's not an everyday kind of sit, and it's not a usual for the sight kind of sit.
It's not a popcorn movie. It's.
But what the fuck is going on behind us? Like goddamn ET and shit.
Well, you know. And that's the more fun it gets in this review.
But yeah, it's a phenomenal film. It is a phenomenal film. I mean, it's not a movie you're gonna feel fucking pumped about afterwards. It's not one that you're gonna feel hyped about. But I mean, it's definitely a movie that you should go watch.
Yeah, it's, you know, and this is one of those movies where they're like, it's based on a true story, but it's one that you have a sense that there was a lot more fact than fiction going on there. I mean, you didn't even have to necessarily have this character have a name. I mean, this is a parable of the South during that time, and it was a horrible part of our history, but it was a story that needed to be told. And I mean, there are countless stories like that went untold for years and will go untold, but it's good to see that somebody's going forward with this, you know. So
that's what we got. Sorry it wasn't funnier, guys.
I know, it's just,
I mean,
yeah,
it's a realistic depiction of
people being whipped and tortured and treated like animals for their lives. In most cases.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming if you look up here, review for Thor, that's probably good. I think down below us, maybe, I don't know.
Go watch the Freebirds review. I don't know.
Jigsaw Freebirds.
There you go. If you want,
that looks stupid.
It looked very stupid.
There'll be more funny stuff.
There will
later.
Be, you know.
Every now and then we gotta have a somber moment.
Right. And this is the moment, but not for waste. You know, it's definitely go see the movie if you have the stomach for it. I mean, even if you don't have the stomach for it, you should see it anyway. It's going to make you churn. It's going to make you cringe. But it's something you should watch. Most definitely.
Dick jokes.
Yeah.
We don't got them this time, so.
Yep. See ya.